Stephen with the Christian Recorder, and we're right here at the 52nd session of the General Conference, right here in Columbus, Ohio. And tonight I have the honor of talking with Dr. John Thomas, the the editor of the Christian Recorder. And it was election day today, so let's dive into that.
Hey, run for you. I'm sorry. That's my song. I'm trying to keep it together today, but let's dish it out. Let's talk about it. But it wasn't just election day. Some other big things happened. So let's maybe talk about those big things before we dig into the election.
So let's start at the beginning of the day. We heard from the Sexual Ethics Discernment Committee.
We did.
And we sparked a huge debate in the church. And for many, we saw a young person get up who was cut off at 45 seconds, even though the rule is to allow them to speak for 2 minutes. So for many of us young people, it feels like young versus old, even though we have allies all up and down through the middle. So my question to you is, how do you think we should move forward?
Well, first of all, Bishop Sanders is a fair man. And Bishop Sanders was cutting off people who were not properly in the queue. And our young friend from Georgia, while he rose to speak, we had already ended the debate. And so he was technically out of order. And so I appreciate Bishop Sanders for following the rules, because there was another guy who tried to do something of the opposite. And he said, no, sir, you're out of order. So on the one hand, I appreciate the technical aspect, and I know him being a fair man. But on the other hand, I'm glad that Presiding Elder Beelan Ingram was with them, because I hope that she helped him understand that we want to hear you, but the rules of order we had already gone past. But he was heard. We heard him, and we do hear you. First of all, to be quite honest, I think that the denomination today said two things. If you look at that vote that was to completely remove the bill from consideration, it failed by, I think, less than 150 votes. That says a lot. In 2021, it was like 51-48. So we're moving closer. And when the resolution came up to reauthorize the sex ed committee, the Sexual Ethics Discernment Committee, it passed overwhelmingly. So I think, looking at the delegates, what our message is, or the message I got was, we're almost there, but we're not ready. And hearing our African brothers and sisters, hearing some of the comments that weren't bullying on the microphone or threats about lawsuits, I think that there's room for honest discussion. And I was talking to one of the bishops who superintends one of the African districts. I think there's a pathway forward, because we're dealing with cross-cutting cleavages of age and culture. People say, Africa will pull away. No. Same-sex marriage is legal in South Africa. We have queer persons from Africa in our delegations. So let's not paint everyone with one brush. But I do want to say publicly, I find it abhorrent that certain candidates would use this issue as a platform. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I have no respect for anyone who uses that sensitive issue to gain attention on the platform. I'll just leave it there. But my message from someone who sits on the stage, who is a young adult, who's a college professor, who has seen this, has seen the pain that this can cause, is causing, continues to cause. Just know that this is not going to die here. We are going to continue the discussions. We are going to be a family, and we are going to do right by all our family. I promise you that. The United Methodist Church took 40 years to remove the caustic language about homosexuality that was put in the discipline. It took us over 60 years to let women progress to ordination of itinerant elders from the time they were actually allowed to be evangelists. All I know is the first ordination of women as itinerant elder was 1960. It's not going to take us 20 years to get this done. I promise you that. But respecting our process, respecting our people, I'm okay with saying we, the family, need more time. But what I'm not okay with us saying is harming people, calling people sinners, and disrespecting one another. That's not okay. So, as a voice of the institution, I am pleading with youth and young adults and our family, our queer siblings, to give us time. But know that there are those of us who will continue to fight for you. Be your voice in places that you can't be or are too scared to be. And know that you are our family and we will not forsake you. That's all I can say about that.
Mm-hmm. And now, before we move on to the election, was there any other takeaways you had from business sessions today?
Oh, yes. If y'all saw me, I was running like a chicken with my head cut off in business sessions, because another thing that happened today on the flip side was we announced the $20 million settlement with the plaintiffs who are suing us. As you all probably know, there are at least six clergy who are engaged in class action lawsuits with the AME Church. We have formally settled that case. The settlement amount is $20 million. That will be part of that settlement is to pay the annuitants an equal share. And you can read our press statement that was emailed out to the Christian Recorder to get details about that. What's important about that is that ending this settlement now frees us up to go after the real thieves: Symetra, Newport, the auditor, the corrupt accountant that Jerome Harris shamelessly hired to defraud this church. So, like Bishop Bothell said in her sermon, y'all hiring mercenaries, but we need to handle this. So I'm glad that the mercenaries can be let go and we can go after the folks. And AARP has joined us in this suit, because what's important is that we get justice for our retirees. We have to fix our own house. But I know, and we hear in these places, there's a lot of hurt that people are bringing in. And I know the church has hurt a lot of folk in a lot of different ways. And there's a particular gentleman from the 5th District, Anthony Steele, who was like, I came here for my family. I came here. And that led some rather irrational emotions made, like we want to cut the matching funds the bishop general officers have. And no, pastors still get matching funds. Heck, his book salary is more than mine is, because the general officers only make $51,000 a year on salary. But the anger, the tension, the frustration, I understand. But I'm glad that cooler has prevailed. And we have been able to settle this case and move forward to go after the people who took the money and took advantage of us. But we also have to repent and say, we let y'all down on our watch. Now, some of the stuff we would have never discovered until Jerome died, Dr. Harris died. But we could have done a better job. And I am proud that, at least from what it appeared, the church is willing to say these things and move forward. But I also understand I have grace, because there is a good degree of church hurt and trauma. I would encourage all of y'all to listen to Byfield's message, because I told Byfield afterwards, you're a mother talking to the church. And that was a message that we all needed to hear. But I'm glad today that we can leave here saying the lawsuit is settled, and we're going with AARP after these thieves.
Now let's dive into this election.
All right, let's dish. We were trying to have hot tea today, but we ain't got no tea. So let's dish with it. Let's go.
It's quite interesting. And I think we should start with the general officers.
All
What did you
right.
think about that?
Well, I think that there weren't many surprises there. I do think that, of course, Dr. Miller's retirement, and I'm glad that he formally requested retirement today. I think that Brian Blackwell was the stronger of the two candidates. I do think that I have mixed emotions about the CIO election, because I know all the candidates. On the one hand, as a young adult, I'm very close to Reverend Washington. I supported him. He's a friend from my YPD days. I mean, I live in Charleston right now, and I know he would have done a good job. On the other hand, Rhonda Burgess, with the retirement of Dr. Fry Brown, we were in danger of the denomination not having a female general officer for the first time since 1992. Actually, no, for the first time since 2000, because in 2000, no, for the first time since 2012, that's when Dr. Fry Brown was elected. But from 92 to 2000, we didn't have one. So that was a concern. And no, from 92 to 2012, we didn't have one. It's late, y'all. I'm working. But the point is, that was a concern. So I understand that people wanted to deal with gender equity on that place, and the church's decision. I just know a brother and a friend of mine had a very tough day. But I also welcome my new colleague from back home, Reverend Dr. Burgess, and I look forward to working with her in her capacity as the new General Secretary CIO. And likewise, the historiographer's race. I know both candidates, and I think both could have done a good job. My hope is that Mother Bethel will need a new pastor, is that next pastor, and Dr. Tyler said this openly, he believes the next pastor of Mother Bethel should be a woman. And I hope that the new bishop of the 1st District will adhere to that desire. So I'm excited to work with my new colleagues. I think there's a lot of good work to be done. I think there's a lot of positive energy that's going to happen. And I just hope, again, elections are tough. And for those who gave the best and showed the church their service, and the church went in a different direction, know that your service is still valued. We still need you. And while we understand this is a painful time right now, know that your church still loves you and wants you to serve.
So now let's get into the meat and potatoes. And let's first start off, we're talking about women in ministry. Let's start off with the first female bishop-elect, Reverend Crawford, leading a class of new Episcopals. Let's talk about that. What did you think about that?
I wasn't surprised. That didn't surprise me at all. Dr. Crawford is not just a strong female candidate. She is a strong candidate. She's done her work. She has a lot of support across the bench, and she's done her work. And so when people were saying, oh, they ain't gonna let the woman, or they're gonna try to block her, I was like, y'all don't know. Like, I had a friend of mine in another district saw when she walked in with her campaign team, and it was clear that people were ready. And I think I have never seen a bishop candidate with a 2/3 vote of the General Conference in my lifetime. That should tell us something about what we think about her and what she can do for the General Conference and what she can do for us as AMEs. It is a huge, huge day for women in ministry. And I think she will be an amazing bishop, and I can't wait to continue working with her, but in her new role. My only concern is who's in the pipeline next. Who's in the pipeline next? And Women in Ministry has admitted that down ticket, we got a lot of work to do in terms of presiding elders, committees, and whatnot. But for this election, I will say, WIM showed their strength. And I think Dr. Crawford's election, as strong as it was, is a testament to that.
Yes. And now I also want to visit Bishop-elect Julius McAllister Jr.
Ah, yes.
What did you think about that? Him being a son of a bishop, but also as we saw him walking through the halls, had a strong coalition with him.
Man, I almost cried. So, full disclosure, Dr. McAllister is my pastor. And I might cry. I was in Chicago doing my PhD. And for those of y'all who want to do a PhD, tell y'all right now, pray for those 3 letters behind your name. But I never will forget that Chicago wasn't the funnest time for me. But he kept telling me, man, I'm going to be at your graduation. I'm going to come see you at your graduation. So even when Julius McAllister left Greater Institutional Chicago to go to Bethel, Tallahassee, we still kept in touch. So when I finally walked to get my degree, my pastor, Julius McAllister, flew on a red-eye flight from Tallahassee to be there at 8 a.m. to see me start my march. He couldn't stay for my hooding, but he was there. And I was so happy that I could, in some small way, return the favor for his son, to help his son get through my alma mater, Morehouse. So Cal's is like family for me. And seeing his father being able to appreciate that moment with him was just something that I will never forget. And also, like you said, the last time his wife was in this city, Bishop Young was gone. That's a huge moment. That's a legacy moment for us. And again, seeing how strongly he was elected, that tells you some things about where he is and the coalitions he had behind him.
So now let's get into the fun part of the election.
Oh, it got really fun really quick.
Part of the election. You had, I believe it was 4 or 5 candidates, and 4 of them decided a ticket.
Yeah.
And then you had one that was about to drop out, but his district and other people behind him stood up and were yelling no, and he walked down from that stage. So let's talk about Bishop-elect Eason and his road to victory.
Well, to understand Eason, you have to understand that in this church, we have parties. And it would appear that Bishop-elect Eason was on the other side of a party or the other side of a ticket. So I was on the dais and I could see, people like telling him, you need to drop, you need to drop, you need to drop. But those who understood his legacy were like, no, you need to stay in here. And at least one candidate every general conference is the candidate of, quote unquote, the people. Last general conference, Francine was the candidate of the people, Bishop Brookins. In 2016, Frank Reed was the candidate of the people. 2012, because there were only 2 slots, that was kind of that was an off year. But in 2008, I'll tell you, Leith was the candidate of the people. And in 2004, Bishop Sarah Francis Davis was the candidate of the people. Like, what do I mean, candidate of the people? The one that the people latch onto to lift up. Let me be clear. Byrd came in solid, but even after he was elected, but Eason grabbed their heart. And I heard someone on the stage saying, only the sisters is chanting. What's all this about? They may have been the ones chanting the loudest. Everybody else heard them. And another thing, Eason, his daughter, Carmen Eason, died about a few years ago, of sickle cell. And those of you may or may not know, I collect Starbucks bucks. And I was in grad school, and I'll be up late at night typing, doing stuff. And Carmen, because when she would have sickle cell crises, she'd be up late too. And so she would just call me, we'd talk. And I found out she liked Starbucks mugs. And so I sent her an Atlanta mug because she was in the hospital and couldn't get one before the store ran out. And actually, the week that she died, she was supposed to come visit Chicago with her dad, and I was going to go see her, But I remember Bishop-elect Eason, talking about, what his daughter meant to him and how Carmen would push him to run. So I know Carmen is smiling right now about her daddy. And I think Eason has had a phenomenal journey to lose your daughter like that and still continue to run and still continue to do this. I think Eason, and I know Eason will do a good job as a bishop. I think we've elected a strong class this year. I think all of them will be strong bishops.
Another thing I want to highlight about the class of bishops we elected, they are all relatively young and will have a lengthy time in the episcopacy. What do you think about that?
Well, you got to look back at how we elect in waves. For example, the baby boomer wave. So John Bryant was elected at the beginning of that wave. He was elected about 8 years before the rest of the boomers started coming in. Like the baby boomer wave really didn't hit stride until 92, 96, and then it ended around 2000. Then you had the late boom, but then, well, it really didn't run. I mean, we were elected boomers from, not from around, we started in 88, but it really hit stride in the 2000s up until around 2012. Those are the late boomers. So then, for example, Bishop Green is a relatively late boomer, right? Late boomer, not early Gen X, but he's a late boomer. He's in his 60-ish. So he was elected 8 years before anyone else of his age category, more or less. You got to look at the retirement dates. We elect in waves. So right now, we are firmly in our early Gen X wave. So you can I expect the millennials to start running. Our earliest millennial bishop will probably be elected in 2032. And then you'll see millennials elected in 30, 36, and 40. We might get one in 28. But I think that you have to look at the waves. Mm-hmm. So there's normally one who will be like the beginning of the wave, and then the rest will come back in. For example, Bishop Green and Bishop Mitchell have the same retirement date of 2036. But Green was elected in 2004, Mitchell was elected in 2016. So again, waves. So I'm glad we do waves because we need to stagger. Because the worst thing that I think happened to us, one of the bad things that happened to us was when the class 72 retired en masse, they were all of a certain age. And so the average age of the bench dropped about 30 years because we lost all these 75 years old. At the time they retired, the average age of a bishop of the AME Church was 72. That's problematic. So I hope that we will refresh the bench and be able to. And also, I don't think all these people are going to serve to 75. I don't think so. I think some of them may retire a bit early to pursue other things, just because we're in a different world right now.
So let me ask you this. You have 6 active bishops going out. So these assignments.
Woo!
And then you also have Bishop Messiah.
He's back
in the stage.
Taking
senior status.
He will be the senior.
So what do you think about this?
Well, first of all, the African Methodist Episcopal Church will have a senior bishop who is in Africa. That is something. Harold Benzonatley somewhere is saying, well, this wasn't a bad day. I think that Bishop Messiah's ascension to the senior bishopric in and of itself is monumental. And for the time that he is there, I hope that he's not just a symbol, but I hope that we can have some real change. Like, we need to have at least one candidate from 14 through 20 elected at the next General Conference to replace Messiah. And we candidly need more than one. I would hope that we're retiring 3 to 4. I hope that we elect 1 to 2 African bishops every General Conference going forward, because we're past time. And I hope that we elect our first African woman soon. These assignments, the first day's election showed that some people's cards were going to shift a bit. And I think that what we're going to see Wednesday is a split decision. There's some places that I'm pretty sure I know. There are also some places that were surprised, that were like October surprises, like, how did this happen? But AME politics is a game of chess, not checkers. So I would say stay tuned, but I think that those of us who've been paying attention won't be completely surprised by the appointments on Sunday. But I do think that I hope that 14 through 20, because those are the bishops where the districts where new bishops tend to go, I think that they'll be well served by this new bench, by these new elected people. I just hope that I know Dr. Mayberry and his committee are fair. I trust them to do what's best in the interest of the church. I just trust that the bishops will receive that, what they're given, in that same spirit of, we are trying to be fair.
So before we end tonight, is there any other things that you took away from the election or business session today? God
is at the General Conference. People used to say, ain't no God at the General Conference, leave it at the door in the worship service. We saw God show up today in the peace that covered the General Conference the minute the settlement was read. Like, you could hear, you could feel the air let out of the balloon. the election of Greg Eason was a God thing. That was a God thing. The clear indication of Erica Crawford as the leader, as the unambiguous leader of her class, was a God thing. The struggle with us to do right by our LGBTQ and our queer siblings, there was no God in some of them comments that I heard on the floor. But Jennifer Leith of that resolution brought us back to some sense of sensibility and reminded us that we are to love. And I just hope that God continues to show up to show us where God is. That the God in that was that brave delegate who got to the floor and so told us feelings without shame. So God is here. God is around us. And I am disappointed that the same-sex bill was not that the same-sex prohibition of marriage was not repealed. Prohibition of same-sex marriage was not repealed. Nonetheless, I am hopeful because I will let my family discern. But I won't let my family do is beat people up. I'm hopeful in the bishops that we have. We elected some good people. I know them all, they'll serve well. I grieve for my friends who did not get the desires of their heart today. Joe Cousin, I was walking with him. I got up at 7 a.m. this morning to walk with Joe. And he didn't quite make it this time. But I'm pretty sure we're gonna see him. We're gonna be focused on him in 2028. But I think that I know there's a lot. This has been a heavy general conference. Heavy. I feel some of the heaviness has lifted in some ways. We still have a long way to go on the restoration for the annuities. We still have a long way to go on the LGBTQ discernment plan. But I feel like we are making progress. And that's what the people came here to see. So I would encourage y'all who are watching this, take a young adult who may have been in trouble about today and tell them, God's in this church. We're going to be okay. Don't give up on God. Man fails. God does not fail. That's what I would say.
All right. So with that brings us to the close of our let out session tonight. So family, until next time, we hope to see you in the halls of the 52nd quadrennial session of the General Conference right here in Columbus, Ohio. And we wish y'all a good night, and we wish you that God may keep you and bless you.
And get some sleep.